Hi and welcome to my channel Shades of Sage, where I discuss all things motherhood. My name is Tashima and today I am finally recording my fourth and final birth story. So if you have been following my channel and if you've seen my previous videos, you know that I was pregnant with my fourth child. He is now here. He is 7 weeks today, and if you hear any noise, he's right down here on my lap. I'm just trying to keep him quiet because he was asleep and he literally woke up the moment I sat down to record, which is why this video has been so hard to record, but hopefully I can get through everything today. So I want to record this video as soon as possible while everything is still fresh in my mind. But for my other videos, if you have seen my other birth stories, I will link the playlist above and I will link it down below in the comment section as well. But if you've seen them, they are lengthy, and I wrote down like everything that I wanted to say so I wouldn't forget in those because they were years ago. But this one is kind of still fresh, but you know, I may forget something. So if I do forget something that I didn't mention in this video, I will definitely fill that in the description box of this video if I can remember. But without further ado, let's get started. I kind of talked a little bit about how the beginning of this birth went. So if you've seen my third trimester, the second part 2 of my third trimester recap, I talked a little bit about how the beginning of this birth went. And my previous video was my birth vlog, so if you haven't seen that, definitely check that out. Okay, but first things first, things started, I would say officially February 28th, which was the last day of February. And at that point, my doctor, so this is like a week or two previous, they recommended that I be induced just because the baby was on the smaller side. And even though for my last ultrasound, you know, he was gaining and he was on track, they still were a little bit worried about that. So they wanted me to be induced on the day that I turned 39 weeks, which was going to be, or which was March 1st. And you know, I just did not want to be induced at all. I have been induced with my first, and I just really don't like the induction process and all of that stuff. So at my last prenatal appointment, which was I think 2 days before I had 2 days before I went back to maternal fetal medicine, we had agreed that I can continue to be pregnant as long as I went back to maternal fetal medicine and got checked up like every few days or so, and baby was doing fine. So that's what we agreed on. And then I scheduled an appointment with maternal fetal medicine, which is at my hospital that I was going to give birth at. At that appointment, I had a regular NST, baby did good, you know, saw the movement that they needed to see, but they did an ultrasound just to check my fluid levels. And that's when things got a little bit, I guess, concerning, because I did not have enough fluid around the baby as they had, you know, as they had hoped or they would like to see. Of course, later on in pregnancy, the baby can run out of fluid. So, you know, they checked the fluid. The lady that did the ultrasound the first time, she was like, I'm not seeing what I want to see, but I'm going to have someone else come in and double check and make sure, you know, that what I'm seeing, they're seeing as well. So another person came in, did an ultrasound, you know, measured the fluid around the baby, and the fluid was measuring low. So then at that point, I had to talk to, you know, one of the specialists. She came in and she said, basically, go upstairs right now. So it was a little, feeling like my first birth, you know, when I had the preeclampsia, they was like, you're delivering this baby today. And I was like, well, you know, how dangerous is it? What are my pros and my cons and all of that stuff? And she ran down the list to me, and what she said made sense. The one main thing that she said is with the fluid being low around the baby, the placenta could end up coming out first, or the placenta can be like smushed or something like that. I think that's what she was saying, was that I could have some placenta problems with the fluid being low, and that the baby, you know, wouldn't be getting enough oxygen and blood flow and stuff like that. And because I already had a baby that was smaller, they recommended, you know, delivery as soon as possible. She said you could stay in a hospital and we could try to pump you with fluids to boost your fluid a little bit more, but you're already full term. I was actually, you know, 38 weeks and like 5 or 6 days at that point. So the next day I was going to be full term. So I was like, okay. So she really wanted me to go up to labor and delivery triage right then and there. I was like, look, can I go home first, get my affairs in order with my kids and all of that? She was like, yes, but I expect you back here tonight. So that's what I did. I went home you know, told my mom, who's also my doula, we got everything ready. I ran back here and packed the kids' bag, and that was like the last thing really that I had to do, because they were going to be staying with my dad and my siblings, you know, while I was in labor. So, you know, I did all of that, took a little nap, ate, but I was just really too like wired to eat or sleep or whatever. So me and my mom went, and you know, and I called my other support person, which was my sister Tiana, and me and my mom made our way up to the hospital. You not happy? You're not happy? Oh, okay, it's okay. It's okay. Me and my mom made our way back up to the hospital. I think we got there around like 8. So this is now, you know, 8 o'clock at night. My appointment was earlier in the day, around like 2 or 3, something like that. And what's funny is I actually had went ahead and scheduled the induction for the next day. So that was a Tuesday, actually. That was going to be on March 1st, just because, you know, everything that they had said. And I was like, look, I'll schedule the induction, but you know, if things are going well, either I'll cancel it, or you know, or I'll actually go to it and try the induction process. So it really was left up to me what I wanted to do at that point. But with the baby's fluid measuring though, I didn't feel like it was safe to kind of force the issue and staying pregnant anymore. So went to the hospital, and the first thing that they did was the COVID test. Now, I did not want to get the COVID test. I have not been tested for COVID since COVID, you know, became a thing. And I just was really terrified of it because I've heard some really bad experiences. So I asked them what would my options be if I chose not to get tested. And they said, basically, we would treat you like you do have COVID, and you would have to keep your mask on the whole time, and your support people had to keep their mask on. And I wouldn't be able to have like visitors postpartum and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. And it really wasn't that bad. It was like 5 seconds each side, maybe. Yeah, like 5 seconds each side. And it kind of just went up far enough to sting your eyes and, you know, and make you tear up. But it wasn't painful. I would say the worst part out of the whole birthing, the whole postpartum period for me is always getting my IV. Now, I know that I put in my birth plan that I didn't want an IV, but with my fluid already being low, I was like, let me just get it. And also, like I said, I have a history of preeclampsia, so I needed magnesium for 2 of my births. So I decided, you know, I'll get it. But I am a really hard stick. And I told the lady that, I told my nurse that walking in, before they even started doing anything, I'm like, it takes a really long time. I have small veins, blah, blah, blah. And at this point, I was super dehydrated. So I told her that. But they never listen, because everybody thinks that they can do it, that they can get it. So she ended up sticking me like 3 times. Then another lady came in and stuck me like 2 or 3 times. It was just getting ridiculous. I hated it so much. And then I started to get like really hot and sweaty, because now I'm in a lot of pain, because it's just, it just makes me mad. It makes me mad, honestly, because I'm like, I walk in and I'm like, just please get the baby doctor, the baby nurses to come in here to do it, because they usually can get it like on that first time. Like I had this little old lady who always gets it on the first time. She did for my last 2 births, but those other 2 were just in there playing around, and it's not their fault, you know, but it did take a while to get my IV started. And so eventually, instead of using like my hand or my forearm, which is what they tried to do, they had to use my the middle part of my arm here to get the blood and to do my IV as well, which, you know, was kind of a nuisance because, right, okay, yeah. Can I tell it? Because you wasn't actually here for this part yet. Okay. So yeah, I had to keep my arm straight, and whenever I didn't for, you know, a period of time, then the alarms would go off and they had to, you know, start up everything, and it just was a hassle. But, you know, it was something that I needed. I actually did need the IV this time, so it really wasn't a way around it for me. Okay, so, you know, checking in, signing paperwork, all of that stuff took about 2-ish hours, 2 to 3 hours. They checked me when I came in. I think I was at like a 2 and like 50% effaced, and I want to say like the -2, I think, as far as the station for the baby. And because my water was already broken, they didn't want to check me too much, and they also didn't want to use the balloon. So because I was VBAC, they weren't going to do like Cytotec or Cervidil. So those are like the pill that you can take, or the Cervidil they actually insert into the vagina to ripen it. So they weren't going to do those two anyway because I was a VBAC, because that can give you like a higher risk of rupturing, of uterine rupture. So they would have done the Foley balloon or the Foley bulb, but they didn't do that either because I was already open on the inside. So they just figured, let's just start Pitocin and we'll start induction that way. So they started Pitocin at about 11, and they started it, of course, on like a really low setting, and then it kind of went up from there. So I tried to take a nap because when I came in the door, I had a headache and I had like a slightly elevated fever. So I tried to take a nap, and I knew it was just like stress and nerves, and plus I was like really hot. So, you know, before the contractions kicked in and were too strong or anything like that. So that's what I did. And after I had a nap, I think I ate something, and you know, we just changed positions a lot. And I can't remember exactly when I started to feel the contractions, but they weren't, you know, that painful at first. I was still able to like move around and talk and all of that stuff. So they pretty much left me alone. They checked like maybe every 3 hours or so, but you know, again, they didn't want to check too much to increase my chances of getting an infection. So every so often they would, you know, up the dosage of Pitocin. I also had the IV going, so like IV fluid, because I was dehydrated. So I had those two things going. You know, I was connected to the monitors, so like the fetal monitors for me, to monitor the contractions and monitor the baby's heartbeat. But I guess at one point the heartbeat wasn't picking up too clear on the monitors. So then they said they wanted to insert like an internal monitor so they could pick up the contractions and the baby's heartbeat a little bit better. And that just looked like a long stick, kind of almost like the same thing that they use to break the water with, and that, you know, is inserted and it stays inside. Now I really hated that because it was just annoying just to have that down there. It kind of felt like a catheter if you've had one of those during labor, you know, or even like the Foley balloon. So it's just, you know, something that's inserted that stays in so they can monitor. But I really didn't like it, and it kept falling out, so it had to be replaced like 2 or 3 times. I did not enjoy that at all, but you know, it was for the baby so they could better monitor the baby. So I agreed to that. Okay, so like throughout the night, you know, I'm on a Pitocin, we're changing positions, we're, you know, just trying to get the baby down, and I'm just breathing through the contractions when they do start. Morning comes, you know, I eat a little bit of breakfast. At first they had my support people, well, they said like no food could come to the room at all, so they couldn't even order like food for themselves. But afterwards, you know, we talked to the nurses and they were able to order food, and so they ordered something for me too. Plus we had all the snacks. If you've seen that video, we had everything. So that was really nice. And I just ate really light because I was, you know, like starting to feel a little nauseous, but I knew I had to keep my energy up for labor and, you know, the birth. So, you know, I ate kind of like, I had like nuts, I had juices to help me to stay hydrated. I had some eggs, I had some like chicken broth and beef broth that was really good. So yeah, I just ate every, you know, kind of like whenever I felt hungry or whenever I felt like I needed to eat something, because it had been a while. So it was like, I don't know exactly what time, maybe like 11 a.m. and I was bouncing on a ball. I was on there for like an hour, and then I remember I was falling asleep. So then I was like, let me get off this ball, because I don't know how I was falling asleep, but I was just so tired because I obviously hadn't slept that good. I hadn't been sleeping good throughout the last stages of the pregnancy anyway, but I wasn't even able to sleep like good the day before I got into the hospital. So I was falling asleep on it, and then I was like, I'll just stand up and do something else because I'm gonna just fall off of this ball. And then the moment I stood up, that's when like my water like totally broke. So my water had been leaking, I think, if I had to go back and say, probably since like the Friday before I got into the hospital. And when I saw maternal fetal medicine on Monday, then that's when they knew, or that's when they noticed that my fluid was leaking. But when I stood up off that ball, like a ton of fluid came out. So whatever fluid or whatever water was left gushed out at that point. I did still leak water afterwards, so it must have been a lot of fluid, it felt like to me, but I don't know. That was good. That was encouraging because I was like, at least, you know, things are progressing and the baby's moving down. But every time I got checked, I kind of was like at the same spot as far as dilation and as far as station and effacement. So, you know, things were going on for a while. They had boosted the Pitocin. At one point, they turned the Pitocin off, you know, to give my like uterus a break to see if I was still contracting on my own, which I did. But the contractions got like further and further apart, and they definitely didn't get any stronger. So then they would start the Pitocin back up, and things just were kind of moving slowly. if at all, at some points. And of course I was getting tired, but you know, we changed positions a lot. I had this wonderful nurse. I love her. I can't remember her name, or I would totally shout her out. But she was great, and she helped get us in some new positions, stuff that I haven't even heard of before. Like one of them was called Flying Cowgirl, and I would try to insert a picture of what that is, but we did a lot. So every 30 minutes to an hour, I was changing positions, and the contractions were getting stronger, but not anything like unbearable. And so yeah, that was just, you know, our game plan the whole time. And they basically said as long as baby is tolerating labor well, and as long as you're doing well, you can continue to labor, you know, however long that takes. So we get around to, let's say, it's been like a day, and I'm on and off the Pitocin. My headache went away, but then it started to come back, and then my temperature also started to go back up. So it had, you know, went down a little bit. Both of those issues kind of resolved themselves once I was admitted and I was eating and all that stuff, but then they kind of came back. At one point in labor, I did stop eating just because, you know, I wasn't sure how things were going to turn out. So I figured, let me stop eating. I continued to like drink clear fluids and water and body armor, but I was like too nauseous, too nervous to eat, and I was like, just in case, you know, I'll stop eating, you know, at this point. So I remember they came in and checked the baby, or they came in and checked. It was like, I want to say like 5 in the morning. So now we're on like day 2, early in the morning. So this was now March 2nd. And like I said, I went to the hospital that Monday night. So that was February 28th. And all day on Tuesday, we labored in the hospital, you know, changing positions, everything like that. When they came in at 5:30, I think it was like 5:30 in the morning, 5:20, I was exhausted. The Pitocin, I think, had just been turned back off, just, you know, to give my body a break. Again, they wanted to do that and to see if I was still continuing to labor on my own. I was checked, and I was still at 5 centimeters, and I think by then I was 70% effaced, and the baby was still station 2, so -2. And that's what, you know, that's what he was when I was checked, like maybe even 12 hours before that. So things were not progressing. Like, they were going, but real slow, which is kind of not normal for a 4th-time mom and my 3rd VBAC. And also at this point, my baby's heart rate was going down. So every time I had a contraction, his heart rate was going down kind of low, like 90, and it just didn't seem like, you know, he was tolerating labor well. Of course, they monitored it, and this went on for like a while, but when they came in at 5 and they checked me, and his heart rate was going down with the contractions, and it looked like I was getting an infection because of my headache and because my temperature just kept going up. My blood pressure kind of stayed fine the whole time, like maybe a little bit elevated, but not like anything for my first birth. So, you know, they recommended the C-section. You know, I thought about things. I looked, you know, talk things over with my support people, and we had already talked about it as well. And at that point, it just seemed like the best thing to do because the baby was now at that point having issues. Like I said, I was in labor for like at least 24 hours, and it wasn't even active labor yet because active labor doesn't start until 6 centimeters. So I wasn't even at active labor. I was still in early labor, and I could just feel in my body that something wasn't right. I don't know still to this day exactly what it was that was keeping him from descending, but I could tell in my body that he wasn't descending. Like, there's a certain point in labor where you just feel all this pressure, of course, down below, and you'll start feeling that urge to push and all that stuff. That does happen a little bit later, but you'll still feel your baby, you know, coming down, and I wasn't feeling that at all. So when they would check me, you know, I was hoping for good news, but I could tell that, you know, things just weren't going the way I wanted to. So we all decided on the C-section. And I had made my peace with it at that point because we literally did everything you could think of. Like, I did not stay still at all. We moved around. I was in and out of the bed. I used the peanut ball. I used the exercise ball. I got on that like 3 or 4 times. We did everything we could to encourage, you know, a vaginal birth. Of course, I did my part here at home before I went to the hospital and preparing, you know, for a vaginal birth. And it just wasn't in the cards this time. So I signed the paperwork. I was a little upset just because, you know, I'm thinking about the recovery. But I knew it was the best thing to do at that time. So I remember I signed the paperwork and I asked for the spinal because that's what I had for my previous C-section. I didn't want an epidural. I've never gotten one, so I'm kind of scared of getting one. And my experience with the spinal has been great to both times. And so the doctor or the anesthesiologist was like, yeah, we can do that. That's fine. And so yes, I remember when they left. And you know, I was crying off and on because I kind of figured it would go, you know, it would lead to a C-section, you know, like every time they checked me and I wasn't changing. And I remember I needed like my mom to hug me, so I had her hug me, and she just held me for like 5 minutes or so, and I just took like really deep breaths to kind of mentally prepare myself for what was about to happen. But I am really grateful that this time it wasn't like an emergency C-section. It wasn't planned, yes, because I 100% was not prepared for a C-section. Like, of course I knew that it could happen. Of course it can happen for any birth, right? But I just, in my head, I'm like, I've done this 2 times before. I know what I'm doing, you know. But then when they said, yeah, we should do the C-section, I'm like, you know, at this point it came down to like my pride. Am I really gonna force myself to still labor, knowing that something could be wrong with the baby, or just, you know, let's just get him out as safely and as quick as possible? And I kind of feel like maybe he wouldn't have tolerated the vaginal birth well, kind of like how I felt with Saya. Like I just knew that like I couldn't push her out. Like I just had that feeling, and I kind of had that feeling with him too, you know, towards the end. So yes, I did have a C-section for this birth, but it was totally different from my first C-section. Like I said, it wasn't an emergency, so we weren't rushing around. It was real calm. Like, you know, they cut out the Pitocin and they took out the internal monitor. And at this point, I was having pretty strong contractions. So I would say like my pain level was probably like an 8 at this point. So I did have to, like, you know, when they sat me up, had to say, stop, wait, I'm having a contraction right now. And I actually walked down the hallway to the OR. I just think that's so cool. And I was having contractions, so we would stop along the way whenever I had one. But I was able to walk. I was like, I could remember everything, and I really enjoyed that about this experience. So yes, we walked down to the hallway. I was only allowed to have one support person, you know, in the OR with me. So that was my mom. She got suited up and everything, and I was down there, and they did the spinal. Well, first you get an injection for just like to numb you in that area. So that's the only prick that you will feel, you know, if you have someone that does it right. The guy that did mine this time is also the same guy that did mine for Sayas, and he's just wonderful. Like, it felt so good. I can't even, it just feels good, honestly. Like, after you feel that first prick, then you get the actual spinal, which if the numbing one is done right, you won't feel the spinal. So, but you will feel your body start to go numb, and it's to me, it's a nice feeling. It just feels like stepping into a warm bath. And then, you know, they lay you down. And this time I didn't have my arm strapped down, which was really nice. I don't know if they forgot and I definitely was not going to remind them, but that was really nice. I will say though that I really got nauseous. I got nauseous for my first C-section as well, and they gave me the anti-nausea medicine through my IV, and it worked instantly. They gave it to me this time again, but I threw up right away, and I was already laying down at this point, and that was my fear for my first one. But I just knew to just turn my head to the side, so that's what I did. I turned my head to the side. I threw up all over the floor. You know, but it was fine. They cleaned it up. This stuff happens all the time, and it's just your body's reaction to like the anesthesia going through you and all of that stuff. So I did not even care. It is what it is. I think I threw up twice or maybe 3 times. I did throw up sometimes during the end of my labor when I was in the labor and delivery room, but yes, I threw up once I got to the OR and they laid me down. But the experience was nice. Like, I saw my mom when she came in. They got the baby out fast. When I say fast, I signed the papers at like 5:30. And it took them like 30 minutes or whatever to set up, and then I walked down. But the baby was out, I think, at like 6:02. So it's just such a fast process, which is kind of cool. And I do know why some people opt for the C-sections, you know. But once the baby was out, and this time I didn't feel all that pressure. Like for Sayas, I felt a lot of pressure, like uncomfortable pressure. Not really necessarily pain, but just a lot of tugging and pulling. I don't know if maybe because she was small and they had, you know, do more to get to her. Asa was a little bit bigger, but of course once they pulled him out, And I was like, you know, just so excited, like, what is it, what is it? And they were like, it's a boy. I already figured it was a boy, but it was so cool to get that confirmation, you know, and see his face for the first time and all of that stuff. So yeah, that was really, really cool. And you know, my mom got to go over with them, take pictures and everything, and I was just sitting there chilling. Like, it was nice. It was really nice. It was kind of like night and day between my first C-section, because for my first, like, I was so out of it, I was so sick, and it was just like, I thought I was gonna die. Like, I was sure I was gonna die. I'm praying, I'm like, Lord, you know, just let my daughter be okay, you know. But this time it was nice. I was just sitting there waiting for them to finish the C-section and everything. I did have some issues with my iron and my blood loss. So it did take them a while to get my like blood to start clotting. And I do remember them being a little bit concerned about that. It did take a while, I guess, like more longer than normal. And I think they use Cytotec to clot the blood. Now, I don't even know how that works, but I heard them say Cytotec a couple of times. And I think that's, you know, all of that was because of my iron, you know, being low. So they had to do like some extra stuff before they sewed me back up. But then they sewed me back up. And all in all, it was like a really fast, cool process. So yes, baby Asa was born on March 2nd at 6:02, I believe. He was 5 pounds and I think it was 5 pounds and 12 ounces and 21 inches long. And I ended up staying in the hospital for like two and a half days afterwards. So all in total, I stayed in the hospital about 4 days, but that's including the labor and all of that. And I did need a couple of iron infusions while I was postpartum. So far this postpartum has been a bit trying. It's been my hardest out of all of my kids. And yeah, it's been an experience. So if you are interested in my postpartum journey, so like how I'm healing and on recovering and all that stuff, just to leave a comment down below and I can start working on some of those postpartum videos. But that is it for this video. I think I got everything. Like I said, if I left anything out, I will leave that down in the description box below. If you have any additional questions, you know, of course, just comment them down below and I'll do my best to get back to them. But that is it for my birth story. This is baby Asa. Would you like to turn around and say hi? Okay. And turn around a little bit. There he is. Okay, so that is it for this birth story. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.